Yeah, it exploded. The skill level and the experience just grew leaps and bounds, exponential growth curve.
Yeah, but the demos and workshops that were constantly going on.
Yes.
Spread the skills. Anybody learned anything, it was immediately. I remember one time that in that period, Harvey started making these. He was trying to make sculpture all along.
Right.
Well, then he got the brilliant concept of getting a little piece of marble about 3 inches square cube and gluing his glass to that.
Right.
And you know it's sculpture.
Right.
Well,
there's no hole at the top. The hole is down, glued, closed against the marble.
Well,
and because it's marble, it's art.
Somebody reported that a picture of that appeared someplace. And within 1 week, Marvin had copied it and somebody else had too.
Yeah, yeah.
Suddenly everybody was applying marble bases.
I never made vessels. I didn't ever take a ceramics class or a metal working class that allowed me to make vessels. So glass was really the first time that I made vessels, and I was fascinated. I was infatuated with them. You were the perfect teacher for me.
Yeah.
Absolutely exactly what I wanted, not knowing that that's what I wanted, but I did want that. And I still make vessels today.
Yeah. And
still enjoy it. But Harvey was on my behind constantly. So I made a bunch of vessels and stacked them up and glued them together so there was no hole at the top and called them totem poles. And those were my sculpture. But they were conceived of as vessels, really, originally.
Well, that's what you get with a blowpipe.
Yeah, yeah, it's pretty natural.
Now with casting, it's really changed.
Yes. Yeah, the changes are astronomical, aren't they? The way, the directions that people are working with glass. When we talked about glass in the 60s, it meant blown at the furnace.
Yeah.
Period. On a blowpipe. Period. That was it.
By oneself.
And by oneself also. Oh, why do you think that? I have a theory. What's your thought on the reason that we worked alone without helpers?
It's Harvey's concept of his hatred for design.
Ah.
He felt that industrial design was such a horrible field because the artist is separated from the product.
Yeah.
And doesn't have any intimate control of the product at all, except with his pictures that he's drawn on paper. And he fought that. I know in all of the crafts councils, conferences, he was always pushing for the artist designer who's working at the bench or whatever, making the object himself rather than designing it. And I think he saw that if you have a crew working for you, you're going to become a designer. And you're not going to be designing it as you make it.
I seem to remember that there were discussions about the type of object that we were capable of making, which was fairly crude object at that time in the 60s, and that any factory produced glass was symmetrical and straight and colorful and all these other things that were extremely attractive to the general public. Our pieces had to stand on the merit of expressing the fluid quality of molten glass. At least that was our rap. That's what we told people. You remember any of that kind of discussion?
Yes. Yeah.
And then there was an exhibition in 1966 at the Toledo Museum of Art called Glass National, Toledo Glass National.
Oh.
One, it turns out, but at first they just named it the National. In '66, and there was a ruling that you could not submit any work for that exhibition. It was a competitive exhibition. It was there was a 3-man jury, and you could not submit anything that was made with while you used a helper. So you couldn't have anybody opening and closing the door. You couldn't have anybody bringing you the punny. You couldn't have a handle brought to you. If it had a handle, you had to do it yourself.
Right.
That was a hard and fast rule in 1966. And I'm just curious why we made that rule. And I've often thought that we were trying to differentiate the free, loose, organic expression of our work. We were differentiating that from the tighter, more controlled factory work, which was always done with a team.
Right.
And I wondered if somebody somewhere along the line might have said, let's figure out a way to keep those factory pieces out of our exhibition.
I suspect that was the reason.
I really believe it.
Yeah.
I really believe it. And I've asked some other people, but I haven't gotten a consensus. I'm glad to hear that you feel that way, because I can't pinpoint somebody actually saying that, and I certainly don't have a document of it being said.
That seminar that Toledo had, I don't know, don't think it was it was the 65, the next year. 67.
67, the next year, yes.
That one, we had a seminar after.
That's right, we did. That's
and
right.
At that, I think that was discussed.
Yeah.
At the seminar.
Yeah. And if I remember rightly, the 67 Glass National 2 is the last time that restriction was ever used for any glass exhibition of my knowledge that I know of.
Yeah, I don't think I ever saw it again.
It just went away.
No.
I also remember that by that time I was in Toledo. I was living there and working, setting up the glass shop. And they rejected a nice, beautifully blown little piece from the exhibition made by Bob Mess on the basis that it was impossible for one person to have blown that piece. The juror said that.
And none of the jurors were glass blowers.
They had no concept of how it... Now, I know exactly how that... I can look at a piece like that. I knew how he made it. I knew that he did it alone. He's not the kind of person that would go against a ruling like that.
Yeah.
He just wouldn't send anything that had help. And plus, he was working alone. That's the way he did things. That's the way almost everybody did things early on. And all it required was putting a small cup, take it off the punny and put it into the bottom of the annealing oven upside down with the punny mark up. Then you blow another bubble, and you go put some hot glass on it, go down and pick up that one on the bottom, that becomes your foot.
Yep.
Then you punny up the inside of it. I know that's how he made it. And those jurors, I've held it against them ever since. Because they kicked out a really nice little piece. It was really a cute little piece. Really nice.
Yep.
I don't mean cute in a derogatory manner at all. Derogatory fashion.
Well, I think probably Mark Pizer was the first one to use assistants.
I'm going to suggest somebody else.
Who?
Dale Chihuly. No, not me at all. I was a follower. I was a late bloomer when it came to using an assistant. In fact, I sort of used to brag that I could do things on my own, and I could bring handles, and I could do all the I added lip wraps. I did a lot of stuff just, out of orneriness.
Well, there's one thing I beat you at.
That orneriness?
Handy aids in the studio.
Oh, yeah?
I didn't have a hanger to hang my blowpipe up.
Yeah.
I went to get a punny. I carried the blowpipe in my hand, gathered on got a bit on a punny, rolled it on my thigh and the barber.
Right.
Went over and laid the blowpipe down and stuck it up.
Right. Right. Yeah, I may have watched you do that, but I know I did it also. But I may have seen.
I don't know how we did it at Iowa, but I know we didn't have a pipe hanger there.
No, no. But we did have a lot of people standing around.
That's true. Might have had help. Maybe we were the first ones to use assistants. I don't remember.
Maybe.
Well, you and I blew a piece of glass together there.
In Iowa?
The end of the 64 class, we were emptying the furnace. And it was this copper ruby glass.
Yeah.
And there was only about an inch of glass in the furnace. And so I got enough to get a gather on the blowpipe to start. And maybe added
one more.
2 or 3 more half gathers.
Yeah.
And then you started bringing me bits to add to it.
Yeah.
And it ended up being a vase about this wide and this high. And somehow it was a cylinder, horizontal cylinder.
Ah.
And an opening in the middle.
Yeah, yeah.
But somehow I accomplished. I don't know.
Wow.
We had a lot of glass out on the sides.
Right.
I just kept blowing it out.
Right.
So you'd bring me over a bit on one end, and I put it on the other end. And
Yep.
that lasted quite a few years, but it had quite extreme thick and thin sections. And the thin sections finally started breaking.
Yeah, there were probably a lot of stresses in a glass that had that much metal in it. Yeah. Well, we started making colors right away in Iowa City, didn't we?
Yes.
Yeah. I know that color was so important to me because I was coming from a painting background, and my interest in the painting world was very strong in the post-impressionist artists. And I loved all those colors, and my paintings were very, very colorful. So it seemed like making colored glass was the way to go for me, personally.
Well, I felt the plain marbles without anything was one of the ugliest colors. It's just...
Yep.
There's nothing attractive about it at all.
Yeah. And yet museums are full of the pieces made in the Middle Ages and the Renaissance with this color.
Yeah.
And even uglier, some of them. Darker green from the Schwarzwald.
And they were all made in factories.
Well, groups of people, probably. If we go way back in the history of glass, before our time.
Yeah.
Like 100 AD.
Yeah.
We don't know what kind of size group they might have had of people.
We do.
We do?
There's drawings on a pot of glass blowers, and there's 3. 3 people
working on one
piece of glass.
Really?
One is bringing a punny.
Yeah.
And the third one is, well, there was a third person there, I think, carrying a piece
to
the oven.
Yeah. And you don't think they saw Chihuly?